know that an entire video dedicated to just camera settings isn't necessarily the most entertaining video, but I know how stressful and overwhelming it can be when you open up that new camera, you start diving through the menu settings and you are completely lost. You don't know if you're doing anything right, if the combination of things that you've plugged in are actually going to work and give you the result you want. So I thought I would make a very sort of concise video about my camera settings, a little bit of information as to why I use these settings, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of guidance when you're first starting out. And although it may not be the most entertaining video, I really hope that you find it useful, so let me know down below if you did. Without any further ado, let's get straight into my camera settings, mainly for the Fujifilm XH1, but I guess these could be translated across the entire Fujifilm series of cameras. So this is what you're greeted with when you open up the Fujifilm XH1 video movie setting menu, I guess. I think it would just be logical to start from the top. And the first thing is obviously your movie mode, what size you want to film in, what your frame rate is. So if you go into here, you're presented with all of these options. I have it in 4K, 16:9, 23.98 frames a second. That's just the most natural cinematic 180-degree shutter that I like to shoot with most of the time. And then 100 to 200 megabits a second, depending on what I'm filming. I tend to just keep it at 200 just because I want the maximum quality from my camera. But 200 megabits a second can be quite space consuming. So if you haven't got the space, maybe you've only got small SD cards, put it in 100 megabits. It will literally free up half the amount of space you need. There is a high-speed record setting, which allows you to film up to 5 times slower than real time. Unfortunately, this is burnt into the video, so it's 120 frames a second slowed down, so you can't really adjust the parameters, and there is a little bit of aliasing, but I like this effect. It works really nicely. Fujifilm have excellent film simulations for movie mode. I put mine in Eterna/Cinema, which is like a nice gradable sort of color space, but also means that I don't have to shoot in F-Log. We'll come on to that later, but Eterna is incredible. It's really nice, very easy to grade, and just looks good straight out of camera if you don't want to grade. Dynamic range, I just keep it 100. I'm not entirely sure what the point of these are. Obviously, I think that at 400, you're going to be using a lot more power from your camera, so I just keep that at 100% most of the time. This is something that I've been experimenting with when it comes to white balance. I like to keep mine at 56 to 54 Kelvin, mainly just balanced to daylight, and I like this effect because it replicates what is true to the human eye. This also means that your colors when you're outside are going to be consistent. They're not going to be changing due to your automatic white balance. So 5600K is what I like to keep it at. That's just cinema daylight. If I'm in somewhere with like fluorescent lighting, I might change that, but for now that stays as it is. I don't really touch the highlight shadow tones or the colors or anything like that. I just keep it the Eterna profile standard. I don't do anything to the sharpness either. I like to just rely on what Fujifilm have decided is best. Noise reduction, again, I don't touch. I just think it's a bad idea to try and do any of that inside your camera. And then we come on to F-Log recording. Now, F-Log is Fujifilm's very flat picture profile. This is excellent if you're in a very high dynamic range situation, but when you're out and about and you're sort of running and gunning, you kind of don't want to be using F-Log, in my opinion anyway, because there's more room for mistakes, and I just like to be able to just do things, keep it simple. I just use Eterna. Coming onto my movie AF mode, I put this on multi, mainly because when I'm doing stuff to talking head, if you have it on area and you drift out of the center or wherever your focus point is, then your camera can hunt a little bit for focus. So I try to just keep it on multi, let the camera decide. It's generally very good at detecting my face. And let me just show you very quickly my custom setting mode for my autofocus. So I've got tracking sensitivity to +4, which is the maximum. So I want the sensitivity to be quite quick, so it tracks me very quickly. And then my AF speed is actually at -2. So it tracks me very quickly, but the focusing, the autofocus, is a little bit smoother. So this eradicates that sort of hunting effect that you can get. I would even consider going a little bit slower, maybe to -3 or -4, if you want a really nice, slow, natural looking, almost like somebody is pulling focus. That just looks really good to me. Your face/eye detection settings, obviously pretty self-explanatory. I have mine set to face on, but eye off. I think this just, again, eliminates the possibility of the camera trying to find something that's not there. The face detection is very good. I haven't done too much with the eye detection, but like I said, I just want it to be able to lock onto something fairly large rather than try and hunt and try and find an eye, for example. So the rest of these settings are pretty much just output settings. I'll just show you my audio settings very briefly. The preamps inside this camera are actually very good, and when I'm using the Rode Video Mic Pro, which is what I'm filming on now, I have it set to 0 decibels on this microphone, but I have it set to minus 19 decibels on this camera. Movie silent control is quite cool if you want to use more of the touchscreen capabilities. I've actually got that turned off mainly because I just like to set everything up. I don't really change anything whilst I'm filming, so that seems a little bit redundant to me, but if you are, maybe just experiment with that. The touchscreen is pretty good on there, so I don't know, just give it a go. So now if I switch over to my photo settings, switch this into single mode, and first up is obviously image quality. I shoot in RAW. I shoot in their compressed RAW, which is a lossless compressed. The uncompressed files are huge. I don't think they're particularly helpful. Shooting in compressed RAW, you still get very, very good results. Just seems to work much better than in terms of storage because they're just massive files. So I just keep that in compressed. The film simulation I use for photos is Classic Chrome. I don't use any of the others, mainly because I edit quite similarly to Classic Chrome anyway, so I think it's good to have a little bit of a preview of how my images are actually going to look, and then I can see that through the viewfinder, I can see it on the back of the screen, and Classic Chrome just looks really, really nice. Grain effect off, dynamic range 100. White balance again I have set to 5600, mainly because, like I said earlier, you can always adjust your white balance in photo, but I like to just have an idea of what, true cinema daylight color is going to look like. Highlight tone, shadow tone, color, sharpness, noise reduction, all set to 0. Long exposure noise reduction, I don't know why that's on. Let's turn that off. I haven't even looked at half of these settings, to be honest. I don't think they matter. So if we go into my shooting settings, obviously these are going to be very dependent on the range of situations you are shooting in. The only settings I can think that matter are your shutter type. If you're using a mechanical shutter or an electronic shutter, they both have their various purposes. I tend to just stick with mechanical shutter. IS mode continuous, and this is also the same IS mode I use for video as well. The IS in this camera is incredible. You can shoot at plus 50mm and it just looks silky smooth. It works very, very nicely. And that's basically it for how I set up my Fujifilm XH1 for video. I know that when you first get a camera, this can be quite daunting in terms of how you set things up. You're presented with these complicated menu systems. So hopefully you found this video interesting or helpful at least. It's not the most upbeat video I've ever made, but I think it's very, very helpful. I definitely watched a few of these videos when I got this camera. So be sure to leave a like and a comment, subscribe, and let me know if you found this helpful. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.